On Christmas morning, 1989, a 71-year-old man stood against a wall in a military barracks courtyard in Romania. 3 days earlier, he had been one of the most powerful men in Europe. He had a palace with 1,100 rooms, a personal police force of 80,000 men, and a nation of 23 million people who were forbidden to speak his name with anything but reverence. Now his hands were tied behind his back. Standing beside him against the same wall was his wife of 42 years. The soldiers did not wait for the order to fire. The entire event, from the start of his trial to the moment his body hit the ground, took less than 1 hour. And his final words were not a plea, they were not a prayer. They were a song. His name was Nicolae Ceaușescu. He was born in 1918 in a small village called Scornisti, one of 10 children in a peasant family. His father was a farmer who drank heavily and beat his children. His mother was illiterate. At 11 years old, Nicolae left the village and walked to Bucharest to work as an apprentice shoemaker. The shoemaker he worked for happened to be a member of the illegal Romanian Communist Party. By 15, Nicolae was distributing communist pamphlets. By 18, he was in prison for it. Prison was the best thing that ever happened to him. Inside, he met Georgievich, the man who would later rule communist Romania. Nicolae became his protege, his enforcer, his most loyal shadow. When Georgievich died in 1965, the party needed a successor, someone weak, they thought. Someone controllable, someone who would take orders from the old guard. They chose the quiet shoemaker's apprentice with the stutter. It was the worst miscalculation in Romanian history. Within 4 years, Ceausescu had purged every rival, and in the beginning the world loved him. In 1968, when Soviet tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia to crush the Prague Spring, Ceausescu stood on a balcony in Bucharest and publicly condemned Moscow. The West was stunned, a communist leader defying the Kremlin. Richard Nixon visited Bucharest. The Queen of England gave him a knighthood. American banks gave him billions in loans. He used the money to build an industrial empire. And then, slowly, he began to lose his mind to power. He visited North Korea in 1971 and saw something that changed him, an entire nation marching in perfect synchronization, chanting one man's name. He came home and decided Romania would worship him the same way. He gave himself titles, the genius of the Carpathians, the Danube of thought. Official portraits showed him decades younger than he was. The national poets were ordered to write verses about him. Television existed almost exclusively to broadcast his speeches. And his wife Alina, a woman who had failed out of school at 14, was declared a world-renowned scientist. Universities were forced to grant her degrees in chemistry. Scientific papers were written by others and published under her name. She demanded to be called academician Dr. Engineer Nicolae Ceaușescu. Anyone who laughed went to prison. Then came the debt. The billions borrowed from the West had to be repaid, and in 1982, Ceausescu decided Romania would pay back every dollar by exporting everything the country produced. Everything. The food Romanians grew was shipped abroad while Romanians stood in bread lines for hours. Electricity was rationed to 1 light bulb per room. Heating was shut off in the middle of winter. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Television was cut to 2 hours a day, mostly his speeches. By 1989, Romania had paid off its entire foreign debt. It was also starving, freezing, and silent. And in that silence, his secret police, the Securitate, listened. 1 in every 30 Romanians was an informer. Typewriters had to be registered with the state, so anonymous letters could be traced. It was one of the most complete surveillance states ever constructed. Ceausescu believed it made him untouchable. He had 11 days left. December 1989. Communism was collapsing everywhere. The Berlin Wall had fallen a month earlier, But Ceausescu was certain Romania was different. Romania loved him. On December 16th, protests broke out in the city of Timisoara over the eviction of a dissident pastor. Ceausescu ordered his forces to shoot. Dozens died. And then he made the greatest mistake of his life. Confident he could calm the nation, he ordered a massive public rally in Bucharest on December 21st, the kind he had held 100 times. 100,000 workers were bussed in, handed banners with his face, and ordered to cheer. He stepped onto the balcony of the Central Committee building and began to speak. And then, from somewhere deep in the crowd, something happened that had not happened in 24 years. Someone booed. Then someone else, then chanting Timisoara, Timisoara. The cameras were live. All of Romania watched their untouchable leader freeze mid-sentence, watched his face collapse into confusion, watched him raise his hand and tap the microphone, saying, "Hello, hello," as if the crowd was a machine that had malfunctioned. That moment of hesitation, broadcast to the entire nation, lasted 3 seconds. It ended 24 years of fear in all of them. By the next morning, Bucharest was in open revolt. The army switched sides. On December 22nd, as crowds stormed the Central Committee building, Nicolae and Nicolae Ceaușescu ran to the roof and escaped in a white helicopter, so overloaded it could barely fly. The escape lasted hours, not days. The helicopter pilot, fearing he'd be shot down, faked engine trouble and landed on a highway. The couple flagged down passing cars like hitchhikers, the dictator of Romania begging for a ride. By evening, they were captured and handed to the army. They spent 3 nights locked in an armored car, hiding from Securitate loyalists still fighting in the streets. And on December 25th, Christmas Day, they were led into a small room in a military barracks in Targov East, where a table had been arranged with a hastily assembled military tribunal. The trial of Nicolae and Nicolae Ceaușescu lasted 55 minutes. He refused to recognize the court. He answered questions with contempt, folding his arms, repeating over and over, "I will answer only to the Grand National Assembly. We will talk in front of the People's Court." The prosecutor asked about the 60,000 people killed in the revolution, about the starvation, about the foreign bank accounts. Elena muttered at his side, "Such lies, such impudence." When the death sentence was read, neither of them fully believed it. They had lived 24 years in a world where nothing could touch them. Even now, hands tied, in a freezing barracks room, reality could not reach them. They were led into the courtyard. Elena screamed at the soldiers binding her hands, the same soldiers she had commanded days earlier. "I raised you like a mother. How can you do this?" Then to the men raising their rifles, she shouted her final words, "Go to hell." And Nicolae Ceaușescu, the genius of the Carpathians, the man with the 1,100-room palace, looked at the firing squad, raised his voice and began to sing. The Internationale, the communist anthem, the song of the revolution he had joined as a shoemaker's apprentice 60 years earlier. "Arise, ye wretched of the earth." He did not finish the verse. The soldiers fired before the order was given. They later said they were afraid that if they waited, someone would stop them. The bodies were shown on Romanian television that night. The nation had to see it to believe it. The execution of the Ceausescus was the last act of the last violent revolution of 1989, and the only one in Eastern Europe where the dictator did not survive. Whether the 55-minute trial was justice or vengeance is still debated in Romania today. The men who organized it later admitted it was rushed deliberately. They feared that as long as Ceausescu lived, the Securitate would keep killing to free him. What is documented, what the cameras captured, is this: a man who spent 24 years forcing a nation to sing songs about him.